right, everybody, I want to welcome you to Pastor's Point of View number 248. My name is Dr. Andy Woods. I'm the pastor teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church. I'm back with my friend, colleague, fellow elder, associate pastor, Dr. Jim McGowan. Today is March the 31st, 2023. I want to give a fast shout out to my dad, who is 88 years young today. Wow. And so happy birthday, Dad. Happy birthday. I know you watch a lot of these shows, and so if you're watching this one, a very happy birthday to you. Turning 88 years old, that's a great thing.
Sure is.
And speaking of great things, Brother Jim, we've got some great stuff today to talk about.
Excellent segue.
Because our world is moving really, really fast into the prophetic scenario spoken of for the end of the age. So we have a prophecy update for folks today. Here's the 6 parts in our outline that we're going to try to talk our way through. And let's start where we always start our prophecy updates, with the centerpiece of divine activity in the end times, the nation of Israel. A lot of stuff going on in Israel this last week or so. Here is an article from the Jerusalem Post, March the 27th, 2023. It says, Israelis stage emergency protest after Gallant's firing. What is that article about?
Thousands of Israelis swarmed cities throughout the country Sunday night following Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's firing of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. This follows Gallant's Saturday night speech, where he urged for a halt to the judicial reform legislation, which he said was causing severe divisions within Israeli society and in Israel's security sector. Thousands of protesters marched toward the Knesset and protested in front of it while the discussion about the judicial selection bill was still underway. The discussion was later postponed. Quoting, the Prime Minister and Nir Barkat are choosing to ignore the warnings of the security system and economists, said the protest organizers. The protesters put up giant signs reading, "Stop, border ahead, entry to a dictatorship," and "It's too big for you," with a drawing of Ben Gvir inside a military boot. The protesters also blocked the road at the entrance to Kiryat Arba. They're advancing legislation that will break up the army and the Israeli economy. They prove that they don't care about the state of Israel, its security, or the economy. Barkat and Benjamin Netanyahu and all the MKs, if you don't stop, you will be remembered to history as those who tried to destroy Israel, the IDF, and the Zionist project.
So what in the world is all of this insanity about? Let's make a political comment, and then we'll give a little brief political analysis and then tie it into what we think, how this fits in with Bible prophecy. But the thing to understand, I think, about this is you have to get beyond Benjamin Netanyahu, and because everybody's trying to blame him for this. Right. You got to get beyond that, and you have to look at the Israeli judiciary, which is leftist, and it's also self-perpetuating. Their system over there, it's not like ours, where the winner of an election, like a governor or a president, typically appoints people to the judiciary. Well, the prime minister doesn't appoint such people. So how do they get entrenched in power? They're self-perpetuating. And, the way it usually works is if an institution is self-perpetuating, once it leans a certain way, it starts to only hire its own.
That's right.
Take, for example, the American university system, which started to lean left, and now a conservative college professor is a member of the Endangered Species, Act, so to speak. Yeah. And that's basically what's happened in Israel. And it's kind of a rogue judiciary, which has interfered with military decisions. Yeah. It's interfered with President Netanyahu's ability to do his job. Notice this map here. We have an arrow pointing to the nation of Israel. And you see how small Israel is in comparison to the green area. Those green areas basically represent theocratic dictatorships of an Islamic nature,
Yes.
promising and vowing to drive Israel into the Mediterranean Sea. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to govern his nation against this background.
Exactly.
And so he has to be able to make decisions, particularly as Israel's enemies, Russia, Iran, Turkey, China, are becoming more and more emboldened. And this rogue judiciary, which is not accountable to anybody, is inhibiting from his ability to do his job. So what he wants to pass is judicial reform,
Yes.
which will make the judiciary actually accountable to the people's elected representatives.
Imagine that.
Instead of being self-perpetuating. And the left, because this will lead to weakening the direction the left wants to take Israel in. A lot of these people on the left that are protesting and a lot of these people in the judiciary want the misguided two-state solution.
Yeah.
And so because they view this as, oh no, it's weakening our power, they're throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
And all of these people that are protesting are either Israelis who are heavily propagandized by the left, and or a lot of these folks have been shipped in from outside of the country. A lot of them are non-Israeli, and when you see the cameras panning the crowd, you see them waving their, rainbow flags and
Right.
and all of these kinds of things. And so what is happening is not only by preventing Netanyahu from getting this judicial reform through, not only is it weakening Israel, preventing a very good prime minister from doing his job, but it's dividing Israeli against Israeli.
Right.
And what did Jesus say in Matthew 12:25?
All right, Matthew 12:25. As always, we're reading from the New American Standard 95 update. And here's what it says. And knowing their thoughts, Jesus said to them, any kingdom divided against itself is laid waste, and any city or house divided against itself will not stand.
So when a nation is divided against itself, it becomes weak.
Yes.
So I think a lot of these protests are not grassroots. It's rather astroturf. And it reminds me very much of a few years back when I had the opportunity to testify here in Austin, the capital of Texas, in favor of pro-life legislation. I remember all the pro-lifers were there right when the doors opened. And then suddenly at 11 o'clock, the opposition showed up. These were all the people with their whistles, screaming and yelling and making a scene.
Bust in.
And the reason they all showed up at 11 is they're all bussed in.
Yeah.
So it wasn't grassroots at all. It was astroturf. And I think that's largely what's happening in the nation of Israel. And people undiscerningly are blaming the whole thing on Netanyahu.
Right.
But really, it's Netanyahu won an election. He doesn't want to be hindered by an unelected judiciary. He's trying to get the judicial reform passed through the Knesset, which is the lawful thing to do. And the left doesn't like it. And so this whole scenario, because of a divided Israel and an empowered left inhibiting the prime minister, is weakening the state of Israel.
Absolutely.
Now, how does all of this fit in with Bible prophecy? Well, it fits in with Daniel chapter 9, verse 27.
All right, Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering.
And interrupting you right there just for a minute, this verse tells you what's going to launch the tribulation period.
Yes.
It'll be a peace treaty between the Antichrist and unbelieving Israel. As you can see from the screen, we've got a chart sort of graphing all of that out.
Yes.
And what starts the tribulation period subsequent to the rapture will be a peace treaty between the Antichrist and unbelieving Israel. And obviously Israel has no incentive to reach out to the Antichrist for her protection by way of a treaty. Unless, of course, Israel is weakened to the point where she sees her need for this treaty.
Yes.
And so this kind of insanity that's going on in Israel right now, I believe, is largely preparatory for this upcoming treaty. What's your take on the whole
I
thing?
totally agree with what you're saying there.
All right, well, with all that being said, let's move to our second area, and this has to do with GOG-MAGOG. And you'll notice the map of the various nations that are going to invade Israel in the last days. You notice we've got a circle there around Israel and a circle around Persia, who we think is Iran.
Yes.
And this is sort of a depiction in map form of a great eschatological invasion that's coming, that's depicted or prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And what that prophecy predicts is Persia or Iran, amongst others, will invade the nation of Israel.
Right.
Now, in order for this type of scenario to take place, there has to be, as a stage-setting device, I would think, pre-existing conflict between those two nations.
Sure.
And so every time folks out there read the headlines related to tension between Israel and Iran, they're literally watching the stage being set for this coming end-time battle.
Yes,
so with all of that being said, we have this article from the Jerusalem News Service, March the 23rd, 2023. It says, Israel threatens military strike if Iran enriches uranium above 60. What does that say?
Jerusalem has warned the United States and several European countries that Iranian enrichment of uranium beyond 60% could trigger an Israeli military strike, Axios reported on Wednesday. Accordingly, the Israeli government has told Western allies that any Iranian progress above the 60% threshold could prompt military strikes against Tehran's nuclear facilities, according to the report. Axios reported that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant asked U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin during his recent visit to Israel to expedite the delivery of the 4 KC-46 tankers that Jerusalem purchased from Washington last year. Israel reportedly needs the aerial refueling tankers set for delivery at the end of 2024 for a possible military strike in Iran. Last month, U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Colin Kahl said that Tehran could produce enough fissile material for a nuclear bomb in less than 2 weeks, comments that echoed those made in an interview by CIA Chief William Burns. Netanyahu has warned that in the absence of a credible military threat or actual military action, Iran will become a nuclear power. The longer you wait, the harder that becomes to prevent. We've waited very long. I can tell you that I will do everything in my power to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. That is not merely an Israeli interest. It's an American interest. It's in the interest of the entire world, he said.
So there, Israel is telegraphing to the world that we can't wait forever.
That's right.
We can't just wait for a Shiite Islamic theocracy who believes they have to intentionally create chaos in the world so that the Mahdi can return.
Yeah.
Who has sworn that they're going to kill us all, Israelis.
That's right.
And the nation of Israel. We can't just sit around and let them get to uranium 60 so that they cross the nuclear finish line. In fact, they're actually importing, planes, bombs, these kinds of things for this attack. So how would we interpret this? We would interpret this as tension between the two countries, which is setting the stage.
With a capital I.
Setting the stage for the Ezekiel 38 and 39 invasion. Now, Ezekiel 38 and 39, think how crazy that prophecy seemed pre-1948.
Really? Yes.
Because there was no Israel to invade. And even after Israel became a nation in 1948, think how crazy this prophecy looked in 1978, because Iran at that time was an ally of Israel.
Right.
and how everything changed in 1979 with the toppling of the Shah and replacing him with the Ayatollah, and Persia or Iran became a Shiite Islamic theocracy at that point, whose intention is to destroy the great Satan, which happens to be us, the United States of America, and the little Satan, Israel. And so with every movement of the clock historically, post-1948, post-1979, history is catching up to the identical scenario the Bible anticipates or predicts. It's amazing. So with all of that being said, let's go to our third area here, and this has to do with mark of the beast technology. And let's read, just if you could, Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17.
All right, Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17. And he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the freemen and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name.
Famous mark of the beast passage, anticipating an economy that's coming over the whole world,
Yes.
which will be cashless.
Yes.
More on cashless in just a moment. But you can't participate in this economy unless you receive some sort of insignia or mark. Mm-hmm. And the Bible is very clear that the insignia or mark, however it's going to look, or whatever it's going to be, it's very clear it's going to be on the right hand or the forehead. Mm-hmm. Right hand, forehead, palm, face. Mm-hmm. Palm, face, right hand, forehead. So keep that in mind as we look at this next article. This one from Fortune.com, March the 23rd, 2023. It says, JP Morgan will let consumers pay with their face or palm instead of a credit card. Now, as this article is being read, or just a small excerpt from it, keep in mind that we are not saying that this is the mark of the beast system. That system, as far as we understand it, is not fully functional until the tribulation period itself, probably the second half of the tribulation period, I would guess. So we're not yet in the mark of the beast system, but it's always very interesting how technology is moving us closer and closer to what the Bible predicts. Sure, technology never takes us in the opposite direction. Absolutely. So this is just another example of stage setting for what later will become the mark of the beast system. So help us with that article.
All right. J.P. Morgan Chase and Company is planning to test new technology that would let consumers pay with the palms or faces at certain U.S. merchants. The bank, home to one of the world's biggest payment processing businesses, plans to roll out the service to its broader base of U.S. merchant clients if the pilot program goes well, according to a statement Thursday. Here's how it works. Customers enroll their palm or face through an in-store process. Then, at checkout, they scan their biometric to complete the transaction and get a receipt. The technology isn't just for J.P. Morgan cardholders. Consumers will be able to link many different forms of payment to J.P. Morgan's new system. And quoting, being able to roll out this new biometrics-based payments scheme would enhance the race day experience for our guests, as they will enjoy a new, faster checkout process. And that's quoting Ramon Pineda, who is the Chief Information Officer for the Formula One Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix this year. He said that in this statement.
Yeah, notice this line here. They will enjoy a new, faster checkout process. I mean, who's not in favor of that? Who wants to stand in line? And, you know, by the way, you don't want to be one of those old fuddy-duddies that's fumbling for cash, or your credit card for that matter.
Yeah.
Just stick your palm and your face there, and you're good to go.
So much more convenient.
And that's how all this stuff is being sold to us. It's being sold to us, you know, under the name of convenience. And then you get the idea that this is going to be much broader than just banking, because it says the technology isn't just for J.P. Morgan cardholders.
Right.
Consumers will be able to link, that's an important word.
Yes, it is.
Many different forms of payment to J.P. Morgan's new system. You get the idea that this is kind of a pretext, if you will, for something bigger, global transactions.
Well, they even tell you that because of the terminology they use. They said they called it a pilot program, which means they're going to do a little test and then they're going to send it to everybody.
Yeah, and everybody's going to like it because it's
Oh, yeah.
convenient. All that stuff about the Bible, nothing to see here, folks. Move right along.
That's right.
Palm, forehead.
Right.
That has nothing to do with it. I often think these individuals that come up with this stuff, do they wake up in the morning, read the Bible, and say, "Hey, let's come up with something that
I'm
mirrors
right
the
there with you.
Scripture?" It's really is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And you wonder what they would say if they were even aware of. Maybe they're aware, just don't believe in prophecies like this. But we look at all of this as humanity is exponentially moving technologically into the identical system that the Bible anticipates for the end times. We're certainly not moving the opposite direction.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to a fourth area, and it's highly related. It's cashless. Pastor Jim just read the prior verses, Revelation 13, 16, and 17, which talks about, essentially a system where you don't use cash at all. And cash needs to be phased out, and it needs to be phased out very, very quickly. The reason being, as long as we're trafficking in cash, our privacy is respected. Our privacy can't be breached because there's really no way for the powers that be to know how we spend our money, what kind of churches we donate to, etc. But the moment you move to a cashless system, everything that we do can be reduced to a paper trail. Everything is digitized. Yeah. So
Traceable and trackable.
Traceable, trackable. They can look at you and they could see, okay, here's what this person reads. Here's where this person lives. Here's how far they drive to work. Here's where they work. Here's what kind of causes they donate to. Yep. Here's what kind of movies and videos that they watch. And they could basically reduce everybody to a profile.
That's true.
An electronic profile. And if your profile happens to be outside the government narrative, then you can be shut out of the system.
Right.
And this is where you're assigned a social credit score, where, depending on the way you act or the way you behave, if you're doing things that are pro-government, pro-New World Order, you get a higher score.
Is there anywhere in the world where we see an example of this, Pastor?
Well, the thing that's interesting about it is people say, oh, you guys are into conspiracy theories. But the truth of the matter is this is not a conspiracy theory. No. The social credit score system currently exists in China.
Absolutely.
This is how the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is able to maintain control of its massive population.
Absolutely.
And if you're anti-environment or politically incorrect, then your score goes down, meaning you're locked out of certain things in life. You can't get the loan for your business. You can't put your kids into the schools that you want to put them into, etc. And you can't move into this social credit score system as long as people are trafficking or completing their transactions in cash. You got to move them to a cashless system. That's what Revelation 13, 16 through 17 is talking about. Mm-hmm. So with all that being said, a lot of people have emailed us with the Silicon Valley bank failure. And generally when you have a bank failure, it will trigger bank failures elsewhere. True. They want to know how this fits in prophetically, how it fits into the prophetic end time scenario. The answer is this banking crisis, whether it's a real crisis or a planned crisis, is used as a pretext to move us into CBDCs, central bank digital currency, which is a cashless system.
Right.
which is necessary for the social credit score system.
Yep.
Now, they won't tell you that last part, but they want to sell us all on this idea that you don't have to worry about these bank failures. We've got your back. Just move into these CBDCs.
Yeah.
And so that's why I found this article here from Natural News, March the 23rd. 2023, J.D. Hayes, very interesting. It's kind of an editorial. He says, get ready for governments to push digital currencies after widespread banking collapse. What does that say?
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank has created an opportunity for over 100 governments worldwide to introduce central bank digital currencies and implement increased government controls in the financial sector. The fear of bank runs and calls for more regulatory oversight have made room for governments to push CBDCs as a solution, which could enable unprecedented levels of surveillance, noted Reclaim the Net. CBDCs are digital versions of fiat currencies that are issued and backed by central banks. Unlike cryptocurrencies, which are decentralized and not backed by any authority, CBDCs are issued and regulated by central banks. Reclaim the Net warns that the following talking points will be utilized to convince us that central control over all our money and making it digital, meaning it can't be physically held and counted, is for our own good. Talking point number 1, CBDCs will protect you from social media bank runs. Within days of Silicon Valley Bank's failure, it was described as the first social media-fueled bank run in history. And fears about social media disinfo started to be stoked.
And let me just jump down here to talking point number 2. Do you see that there? Can you read that one?
Yes, sir. CBDCs will provide financial stability. As Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, the prospect of widespread financial contagion event loomed. Companies said they were left unable to pay staff large online platforms, delayed payments to sellers, and other companies revealed that they had held significant portions of their cash at Silicon Valley Bank.
And interrupting you just for a second, jumping down, it says, keep in mind that Congress passed and Barack Obama signed major financial regulation legislation following the last major market and banking collapse, the Great Recession of 2008. In other words, there was a prior economic downturn, arguably could have been caused as well, that was used as an excuse for oh, don't worry, you can trust us. Look at all of these massive government regulations that we're now passing, in the wake of this downturn for your own protection. And can you read the last part, just beginning with talking point number 3?
Yes, sir. Talking point number 3, CBDCs should be used for customer deposit protection. Many governments have already cited making direct payments to citizens as one of the main use cases for a CBDC.
So the Silicon Valley Bank failure, the whole message is fear, fear, fear,
That's
fear,
exactly
fear, fear. And once they get you in a state of fear, then they can sort of corral you or herd you into the next layer of government control that they want to bring in. In this case, CBDCs, which is a cashless economy, which we think is preparatory for a social credit score system. They won't tell you that last part, by the way. A little bit of bait and switch going on there. And we think it's prophetically significant because it's putting into place the structure or the framework for what ultimately could very well become the mark of the beast. And so we're sort of protected from this if we're just not afraid. It's hard to herd people that aren't afraid. Once you get them in a state of fear, you can herd them any direction you want. Maybe that's why the Bible 365 times, once for every day of the year, by the way, says something to the effect of do not fear. And so God doesn't want us to walk in fear. But when we're afraid, we have a tendency to trust voices that tell us we're going to bring in the next layer of government control for your own good. And you wake up one day and suddenly all of the freedoms that you were born with have disappeared.
Good word.
Yeah, would you add anything to that?
You know, I just think that what you're saying is so right. They want us to be lemmings. They want to get us started moving in a direction through fear. And, once you get, your mass going, it's hard to stop it.
That's exactly right. It's called critical mass, I think.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Let's go here to the fifth area. This has to do with global environmental spirituality.
Yes.
We know that there's going to be a one world religion in the last days. We see that predicted in the book of Revelation, chapter 17 and verse 15. What does that say?
Revelation 17:15, and he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.
Now, harlotry in Scripture is typically used to communicate false religion.
Right.
So this is obviously a religious system of some kind. And then when it talks about the waters where the harlot sits, it's talking about the religious system's influence. What is being influenced is the waters. Mm-hmm. The waters represent four things: peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And in the book of Revelation, when you see those four nouns together, typically what it describes is universal global influence.
Yeah.
In fact, those are the same four nouns used in the book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 9, to describe those for whom Christ died, which is the whole world.
Yes.
And so just as those four nouns represent global influence in chapter 5, that's what they represent here in Revelation 17, verse 15, a one-world religious system. And so the question at that point, then becomes, how is this one-world religious system going to come into existence? Yeah. I think one of the key pieces of the jigsaw puzzle is something called Gaia. Why don't you read this quote real quick? This is by James Lovelock. He's a Gaia advocate, and he's describing what is called Gaia.
All right, this is the Gaia hypothesis. Gaia is Mother Earth. Gaia is immortal. She is the eternal source of life. She does not need to reproduce herself, as she is immortal. She is certainly the mother of us all, including Jesus. Gaia is not a tolerant mother. She is rigid and inflexible, ruthless in the destruction of whoever transgresses. Her unconscious objective is that of maintaining a world adapted to life. If we men hinder this objective, we will be eliminated without pity.
So Gaia hypothesis is the idea that the earth is not inanimate, but animate,
right,
and is actually a living, breathing, thinking entity, and our mother. And if we don't treat her correctly, she will retaliate against us through hurricanes, tsunamis, forest fires, perhaps, earthquakes, and the like. I remember the actor Danny Glover back in 2009. In light of in the wake of the Haiti earthquake, basically saying, and you can find this on YouTube, you can track this down, basically saying that the Haiti earthquake happened because we, the United States, didn't treat the earth properly by signing on to the Copenhagen Environmental Summit mindset. And so Gaia, kind of got us back, by causing an earthquake.
She showed us.
She showed us. And that's literally how people think. And it's kind of interesting, the higher up you go in the echelons of power, this type of mindset is more prevalent. Yeah. And it's a confusion of what the Apostle Paul called at the end of Romans 1, a confusion of the creation with the Creator.
Right.
Once we reject a true knowledge of God, we have a tendency as lost human beings to worship the creation instead of the Creator.
That's true.
And Gaia is worshiping something God made as God itself. And I think this will largely provide the pretext for the end times scenario in global governance, because once we start believing this, then we will accept any global regulation handed down
Yep.
to manage our lives on behalf of Gaia.
Right.
I mean, what we eat, what we drive, where we drive, what kind of hairspray we use. And think of it, all of it can be micromanaged under the name of not upsetting our mother. And so
Yeah.
we'll submit to these international, bureaucratic regulations. And I think this religious side of it is largely what's going to bring in the globalism of the last days.
Yep.
And this explains where this whole climate change mentality comes from.
Exactly.
The climate change folks, first they were talking about global warming, and then when the numbers didn't add up, they just switched to the umbrella expression. Climate change, what they'll tell you is this is science. This is peer-reviewed science.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times in the last couple of years have we heard the expression, follow the science?
Right.
I'm here to tell you, folks, that science, properly understood, has nothing to do with it.
Right.
It's all about spirituality and religion.
Right.
So to demonstrate this point, we have this article also from Natural News, March the 23rd, 2023, by Ethan Huff, in dealing with the University of Helsinki awarding Greta Thunberg a doctorate in, what does it say there?
Theology.
In theology, not science.
No.
Theology for what? For her evangelical, notice how spiritual that sounds,
Yeah.
for her evangelical work in saving souls. Oh, sorry, it doesn't say that. For her evangelical work in converting the world to green religion.
Yeah.
Now, as the article is going to demonstrate, Greta Thunberg is the girl that was, we think, manipulated and used by the globalist forces as a teenager.
Yeah.
And one of these days she's going to wake up and realize that she's been used, who basically threw a tantrum at one of these globalist meetings about how we need to curtail capitalism so that, the earth can be made safe for her generation. She was made into basically celebrity status from that point on.
That's right.
And now,
teenager.
as a teenager, and now we're discovering that she's actually being awarded an honorary doctorate in theology.
Yeah.
What is that? That's a doctorate she didn't earn.
That's true.
That's painful for me.
Yes.
Because I have a doctorate in Bible exposition, and it took me almost 7 years to get it. And here she's being awarded it, without putting any academic work in at all. And she's being given this doctorate not in science. That's the point I want to make, but in theology, because what's driving this green agenda isn't science at the end of the day. It's a theological mindset. So help us with that article.
She's a prophetess for the Gaia hypothesis, right? The University of Helsinki in Finland has announced that this year's Conferment Jubilee ceremony, which began on March 20th, includes the issuance of an honorary doctorate of theology to climate activist Greta Thunberg. On June 9th, Thunberg will be awarded her doctorate of theology alongside various professors and bishops. In essence, the school is treating the global warming fanatic like some kind of religious prophet whose efforts to scare everyone about climate change have apparently contributed greatly to the spread of the green religion around the world. Reports indicate that Thunberg will receive the title of Doctor Honoris Causa at the University of Finland, this being its highest recognition. Thunberg first launched to fame following a speech she delivered to world leaders at the United Nations while she was still a teenager. Thunberg scolded the room for refusing to put an end to eternal economic growth, which she hysterically claimed is responsible for a coming mass extinction event. How dare you, Thunberg howled, as crocodile tears began to form in her eyes. You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I am one of the lucky ones.
So sometimes, Brother Jim, I feel like I'm living in a cartoon world,
Yeah,
or in
fantasy
some
sometimes.
fantasy world, some kind of alternative universe, because I really can't believe the stuff I'm reading.
Right.
Number one, you have a teenager who throws a tantrum and garners world attention in the
Yes.
process
Rewarded.
over a crisis that doesn't even exist,
Yes.
because according to the Noahic covenant, which we've quoted many times, Genesis chapter 8, verse 22, the earth is going to go through natural cycles,
Exactly.
regardless of what the owners of private property do
Right.
or don't do.
Right.
So we have a teenager throwing a tantrum, gaining world attention over a crisis that doesn't exist, and her fame is so heralded that now we're going to give her an honorary doctorate, not in science, but in theology.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, what universe exactly am I living in?
Exactly, brother.
I mean, could you make up something like this?
I couldn't.
I don't think I could either. And so we think this honorary doctorate in theology, not science, is exemplary of the Gaia theology,
It's telling.
because it's pushing us into the last days scenario,
Yeah.
using environmental spirituality, as a pretext for it.
Yes,
And
sir.
so this whole global agenda, the reason people are so exercised about it is it's their religion.
Yes.
The climate change issue, whatever you think about it, is not some kind of, objective scientific analysis the way they would like it presented, but you're tampering with people's world religion.
Yeah.
It's like the prophets of Baal, remember?
Yes.
In the book of 1 Kings, is it, chapter 18, who were lancing themselves
Yeah.
because they were so involved in Baal worship. This is the kind of thing that's happening in our world.
Insanity.
So with all that being said, let's go to our last area here, and it has to do with the United States of America in decline, which is a sad issue for me to talk about. But you'll notice our map here, once again, of Ezekiel 38 and 39. It identifies the various players that are going to invade Israel in the last days. And you notice that the United States of America is nowhere to be found.
Right.
And this is, in fact, is true of any prophetic text you want to look at for the end times. And as far as I can tell, despite the fact that people strive to push it in there, the United States of America is not here and or involved in the last days scenario. So the question is, well, what happened to the United States?
Yeah.
So we think that the inevitable decline of the United States also is stage setting for the end time scenario. So the United States is declining in several ways. We're going to give you a few here. Notice this first article from skillroadbriefing.com. It's by Chris Ellis, March the 27th, 2023. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had the name wrong. silkroadbriefing.com. And the title of it is The BRICS. Now, folks out there, you need to know what the BRICS is.
That's true.
Because the BRICS, if you understand it, and their conglomeration and banking system will explain to you the rapid devaluation of the dollar that we are now experiencing.
Yes.
The BRICS has overtaken the G7 in global GDP. Help us with that article.
The India-based Meg Updates platform, one of the world's largest online informational platforms in terms of views, has stated that BRICS countries have officially overtaken G7 in share of world PPP GDP, and that this trend can be expected to continue. The BRICS currently include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, while the G7 includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, as well as the European Union.
And let me just interrupt you just for a second. It says here the current BRICS 5, very bottom of page 6, top of page 7, now constitutes 31.5% of global GDP, while the G7 share has fallen to 30%.
Yes.
And what this BRICS conglomeration is these nations, as you mentioned, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. These nations, as they're coming together and trading together and even forming their own union, and to some extent their own currencies, common currency, these nations are in ascendancy.
Right.
The G7, which includes Western powers, including the United States, is going the opposite direction.
Right.
In fact, the GDP numbers are for BRICS. Their GDP is 31.5%. The G7 has fallen to 30%. Well, this then becomes the explanation for the decline of the West and the decline of the dollar, largely in preparation for the last days system. Because it could very well be that by the time the end time scenario rolls around, the United States is such a third-rate power and has such little influence, there's no reason to mention the United States in Bible prophecy. So that would be an example of the United States in decline. Something else that's happening is the values that once made the United States great are in decline as well. Look at this article here from the Wall Street Journal, March the 27th, 2023. It says, America pulls back from values it once defined. Those values include patriotism, religion, and hard work.
Yes.
And most Americans today are saying that those values hold less importance. Help us with that article.
Patriotism, religious faith, having children, and other priorities that helped define the national character for generations are receding in importance to Americans, a new Wall Street Journal NORC poll finds. Some 38% of respondents said patriotism was very important to them, and 39% said religion was very important. That was down sharply, though, from when the journal first asked the question in 1998, when 70% deemed patriotism to be very important, and 62% said so of religion. The questions of who and what to believe has caused many in the U.S. and the world to lose faith in our institutions. Religion is no exception. We're shifting ever closer to atheism or irreligion. In fact, the fastest growing religion is no religion at all.
So there's a clear shift in values in what we call the divine institutions. You'll notice this slide here, it mentions at least 5 divine institutions. These are institutions that the Creator has built into the fabric of fallen creation, allowing fallen creation to be perpetuated in spite of its fallenness. And nations that honor these institutions become great. Nations that dishonor these institutions start to wane in power and authority over the earth. They are, and they all come from early Genesis, and people can see the scripture verses that we have for each of them. Conscience, marriage and family, labor, government, and nationalism. And as you were reading an excerpt from the article, 3 institutions were named. People are less interested in bringing into the world and rearing children. That's an attack on marriage and family. They're less interested in industry and hard work. That's an attack on the institution of labor. And they're less interested in patriotism, which is an attack on the institution of nationalism. And so it's no wonder that the United States is sinking the way it is.
Absolutely.
What is Proverbs, notice this chart here, or this graphic, Proverbs 14:34 and Psalm 33 verse 12. What do those verses say?
All right, Proverbs 14:34, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And Psalm 33:12, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord.
Notice it doesn't say tax policy exalts a nation.
Correct.
It says righteousness exalts a nation.
Amen.
So it's no wonder the United States is in decline when you understand that the greatest religion in terms of growth now in the United States is no religion at all.
Right.
How else is the United States in decline? We have this article that comes to us from the postmillennial.com, March the 24th, 2023. It's entitled State-Sanctioned Kidnapping. A California bill is about to allow state-sanctioned kidnapping. What is that about?
A California Democrat has proposed a bill that would allow a mental health professional to place a child as young as 12 in a residential shelter facility without parental knowledge or consent and without there being any prior allegations of incest or child abuse. The stated purpose of AB 665, introduced by Assembly Member Wendy Carrillo, is to bring two existing laws into alignment. Currently, children age 12 and over are able to consent to receiving mental health treatment or counseling services, but cannot consent to being placed into a residential shelter facility unless deemed either a risk to themselves or others, or in cases where the minor is an alleged victim of incest or child abuse. AB 665 seeks to remove these caveats. The bill is strongly opposed by Our Duty, an international group of parents of children who are or were gender questioning, who believe the law would account to state-sanctioned kidnapping.
So, just to interrupt you there for a second, you can't grab a 12-year-old out of the public school and put them into, what does it say, a shelter facility, unless there's certain criteria. The minor is an alleged victim of incest or rape, incest or child abuse, or is some kind of risk to themselves or others. I mean, unless those criteria are met, you can't just grab someone 12 years old or older, and without their parents' consent at all, put them into a, what is it called here, some kind of shelter facility.
Yeah.
Well, if this bill becomes law, then those conditions and criteria are eliminated, allowing the state to take a 12-year-old who consents to, for example, hey, my parents think I'm a boy, I think I'm a girl. So they're able to take the child away without the parents' knowledge and put them into a shelter facility so that the transitioning process can begin.
Yep.
I mean, this is nothing short of state-sanctioned kidnapping. And people say, well, that's just California. But the truth of the matter is, as California goes, eventually the rest of the world or the rest of the country goes as well. And this is an attack on another divine institution, the institution of family. It separates the authority structure between parent and child and puts the state right in the middle of these things.
Right.
It goes right against Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, which says what?
All right, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up.
See, this state-sanctioned kidnapping is an attack on this divine institution here, which God puts... It's amazing you have to even say that this day and age, but God puts parents in authority over their own children. The state is not to be involved in abrogating that relationship. And by taking someone that's 12 and consents to being taken to a shelter facility without the earlier criteria even being met, I don't know what to say about that other than it's state-sanctioned kidnapping in violation of Deuteronomy chapter 6. Where am I going wrong?
No, you're absolutely right, but it's worse. It says it starts at age 12. So if you're 12 or above, so they can, as long as you're considered a child, 12 or above, they have complete authority over you.
Yeah, I mean, imagine your child, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever, being dropped off at school and then not coming home.
And you never see them again.
And you have no idea where they went.
Yeah, exactly.
And the state acted legally in taking them somewhere without the parents' consent. I mean, this is, it's just astonishing to me that these things are happening.
Well, I have to add this because one of the things that comes out later in the
Yes,
article,
yes.
and I really encourage you all to get the show notes, but it says that the child may not come home from school that day, but could instead be sent. It's not just to any housing facility; it's to an LGBTQ housing facility.
Mm-hmm. To be transitioned.
Yeah, to be transitioned,
groomed, whatever word that we want to use.
It's frightening.
It is, and this is what happens when you have one party rule.
Yes.
In our,
No morals.
And no morals in the state that I'm from, California, which didn't used to think this way.
No.
One other way that the United States of America is in decline is related to our Second Amendment. You'll notice this article by Chris Pandolfo, March the 28th, 2023. Of course, we've just had yet another tragic, we're right now recording this in the wake of yet another tragic shooting in, what was it, a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, and now we're back to the similar refrain of we need more gun control. What does that article say?
In a familiar refrain following deadly shooting incidents, Biden urged lawmakers to reinstate a federal ban on so-called assault weapons. The 1994 law he referenced banned semi-automatic assault weapons and large-capacity ammunition-feeding devices, which Biden has credited with reducing mass shootings. On Monday, an armed gunman went on a rampage at the Covenant School in Nashville, killing 6 people.
So our Bill of Rights in decline, the time-honored relationship between parents and children in decline, the values that once made our country great in decline, and the rise of the BRIC system, how the BRIC system is actually usurping Western powers.
Yeah.
Western powers in decline. I guess I would say that this is all stage setting for the end time scenario, because I don't see a prominent United States in Bible prophecy. I mean, it's sad for me to talk about, but this is what's happening prophetically.
Yeah.
So I hope folks today enjoyed our prophecy update as we looked at Israel, GOG-MAGOG update, Mark of the Beast technology, cashless, global environmental spirituality, and the USA in decline. Do we have, Brother Jim, any good news in the whole thing?
Well, thankfully we do. We always like to end with this verse, Titus 2:13, which says, "Looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Christ Jesus."
And what a time of the year as we come up very quickly on Good Friday. What a time of the year to be thinking about the thief on the cross.
Yes.
And I found this on social media by someone named Alex Sage. I don't know much about this individual author, but I felt this was so good that we needed to share this with our audience by way of a gospel presentation today.
All right. Love to share this with you, folks. Be sure and get the show notes. How does the thief on the cross fit into your theology? No baptism, no communion, no confirmation, no speaking in tongues, no mission trip, no volunteerism, no financial gifts, and no church clothes. He couldn't even bend his knees to pray. He didn't say the sinner's prayer. And among other things, he was a thief. Jesus didn't take away his pain. He didn't heal his body or smite his scoffers. Yet it was a thief who walked into paradise that same hour as Jesus simply by believing. He had nothing more to offer other than his belief that Jesus was who he said he was. No spin from brilliant theologians, no ego or arrogance, no shiny lights, skinny jeans, or crafty words, no fog machine, donuts, or coffee in the lobby. Just a naked, dying man on a cross, unable to even fold his hands to pray. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. That is the good news of the gospel.
That's one of the best presentations of
I
the
love
gospel I've heard in a long time.
Yes.
And believing in Christ is what ties you into the promise of Titus 2:13, where your hope is no longer in this world, which is sinking fast, but in the soon return of Jesus to rescue us from the world. Some very fast infomercials, Brother Jim, by way of closing. I want to make people aware of the Mid-America Prophecy Conference. I'm one of the presenters, along with several others that you can see there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, May the 26th and 27th. I believe that event will be live streamed. I want to make people aware of our app, how we're putting onto our app more and more of our teaching material.
Yes.
So it's just another way to get pastor's point of view. We've got them all up there now. This one will be uploaded there momentarily, as well as the other verse-by-verse teachings that we've done here at Sugarland Bible Church, as well as the topical sermons. I want to make people aware of the fact that PPOV is available in podcast format. Just go to wherever it is you get your podcasts and type in Andy Woods Ministries or my name or Pastor's Point of View or something, and you should be able to find this in podcast format. I want to direct people to our website, andywoodsministries.org. You mentioned the show notes. There's a prominent way there on the homepage to sign up for the show notes with all of the links, so you can have these for your own study as resources, and hopefully validate the things that we're saying to see if they're true or not.
We're not making it up.
Which is what we're obligated to do as Christians, right? We
Right.
didn't, as Peter says, we didn't follow cleverly
Hebrew.
devised tales. And one other quick thing, we're doing yet another cruise with Compass Ministries. I think spots are going fast there. I think we're almost filled up.
They always do.
It's going to be September 28th through October 16th, 2023. You'll see a phone number and a website that you can go to learn more information. There's a map of where we're going to be going on the cruise, basically the places Paul went to on his missionary journeys, as well as 3 days in Israel, some time in Rome, and some time in Egypt. So it's a great way to take a vacation, at the same time learn about the heritage,
Wonderful.
where many of our biblical events transpired. That's all I have for today, Brother Jim. So we'll sign off at this point. We want to thank everybody for watching. We love you. We pray for you, and we'll see you next time on Pastor's Point of View. God bless you.